Hi again, everyone, from Cedar Rapids. I'm Bob Ask with my story, my life in the context of history. History as I lived it for a long, long time. History as I studied it, and history as I taught it in school as my career. History as I lived it, studied it, and taught it. Today, for vignette number 4 of the total of 20 proposed sessions or lessons, if you prefer to call it that, I've entitled it, As a Boy, My Career is Set in the 1930s. In reflection, it is quite clear now that it was as a little boy that Bobby Ask was starting his vocational path. He was to become a history teacher and an athletic coach already from back that early. Oh, of course, there would be other steps in that line of toward professional teaching and coaching, and it would have to be finalized in college decisions, and there would be competition for who gets Bobby Ask in their line of work. You know, I love being a sports teacher, a sports announcer. I would like to have been a sports writer. Both of those were high on my list. And fortunately, the way things turned out as a teacher coach, I was able to employ some of those skills in my work all along. So in the long run, it all came together. Teacher, coach, and along with it, a lot of announcing and a lot of writing. As for teaching history, 3 interesting and evidences came about mid-decade in the 1930s. First of all, my father would walk home 2 miles from the public library on those winter nights with Civil War books. Beautiful, big, heavy Civil War books, a whole series. And I would indulge in the stories of Shiloh and Antietam and Gettysburg and Appomattox and all the rest. Lee and Grant and Sherman and the march through Atlanta to the sea. I became enraptured with the Civil War, and you know, incidentally, as a teacher, decades later, a student came up to me and said, "Mr. Ask, we're downsizing in my house. Would you like to have a set of Civil War books?" They were the very same things. Those books now are in my son's office in his special Civil War room because Jerry has gone far beyond me in my favorite subject, the Civil War. He's been to Gettysburg 7 or 8 times. I've only been there 2 times. So there was the Civil War. Then along came the cowboys. I had, as I told you last week, a special little suit, holster, and gun. And I loved Cody, Buffalo Bill. I loved George Armstrong Custer, Little Bighorn, the Oregon Trail. I fell in love with the West. The West. And then there was the American Legion magazines that my dad, a veteran, as we've noted before, subscribed to. And I would go through those Civil War books or those American Legion magazines and study places like Verdun, where my father, by the way, was stationed and ready to go over the top into no man's land the day the armistice came about. November 11th, 11 o'clock, 1918. And the war was over, and my dad got to come home. But can you imagine a little kid, 7, 8, 9 years ago, no older than that, going around singing, over there, send the word, over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. World War I. No wonder Bobby Ask was going to become Bob Ask, the teacher of the Civil War, the West, and World War I. Plus, as you can already tell by our series to this point, one of my very favorite topics, the 1930s. You can see why. Seemingly, my career would become a multiple one. A history teacher. Now a quick look at what led me to the vocational coaching side of things. As I look back now, I was also being hooked in athletics by the year 1934 when I was 6 years old. It came about in the 1934 World Series. I loved it, took sides, knew and still know the club rosters for St. Louis and Detroit. The Cardinals with Dizzy Dean and Paul, his brother. The Tigers with Gehringer and Greenberg and Goslin and Cochran. I was for the Tigers. The Cardinals won in a 4-3 series. And by the way, all 4 Cardinal victories were won by the Dean brothers. The more famous Dizzy Dean and his brother Paul. I bet I have or had a sports shirt older on the Cardinals than all of you Cardinal fans out there. It was the first one I ever received, and it said up here, Dizzy and Paul. Well, that was the Cardinals that you happy Cardinal fans will remember. Well, I also began playing catch with my brother John. How many times I threw a baseball, how many times I shot a basket in a ring my father put up, how many times I would forego something else and spend a dime to buy a Sporting News and all the other books that I accumulated. Playing neighborhood games where it seems like I was always the captain, the organizer, the schedule maker, the one who got things going. Already that was a part of my growing up. And then there was watching the Ottumwa Bulldogs in their games and in their many practices. My dad took me way across town to see all-star softball playing. Radio was becoming a big thing, and I would listen to the games on radio. And by the way, guess who was one of the sports announcers I got to see, not on television, but by visiting Des Moines, looking at the WHO radio station booth. And there he was, Dutch Reagan. Later, the great President Ronald Reagan. Well, there was Garfield School that we've alluded to earlier, and all of these were to the point where, even before my 7th grade, my grandpa saw a crisis develop with John and Bob. We were getting too much in the way of athletics. And my grandpa, I can remember saying, we've got to get some of the ball out of the head. There's too much of that. So he bought us, John and me, little woodworking kits. Hammer, saw, screwdriver. We tried them. But somehow that hammer just never felt as good as this kind of a ball, or this kind of a ball, or that strange organized or put together football. The crisis was over. Luckily, things turned out better. Aren't you glad I'm not a carpenter? Would you like me to have built you a home? Aren't you glad that I went into coaching? I'm sure glad. And I can remember music I liked so well. We talked about over there. Well, there was also a song I sang. Hail to the victors valiant, hail to the conquering heroes, hail, hail to Michigan, the champions of the West. I knew all the songs on Wisconsin and all the others. And I also got to know and read about Niall Kinnick. We'll never forget him. Well, I conclude with some fun memorabilia that I've saved to this day. Talking about organizing neighborhood games, I would go home on my little toy typewriter and type up the results. Here's the results of what I named the East Ottumwa boys basketball team. For my team, the Mohawks were consolation champions. And I had it all typed out, the scoring leaders and all the games. A little kid already putting these things together. And then I would have a little make-believe fantasy games where I would throw dice or do the spinners and have little games where I scheduled and played out with my team against the others. Being a neighborhood captain of my own little team, here you see some of the plays that I put together, showing an end run or a line plunge, an actual sheet from those wonderful early days. And drawing, along with music and all the rest, I love to draw. And here are some of my drawings of the football teams. Well, I became a coach and a teacher, and it all started way back then. See you next time.